In the movie, one battle after another is Teyana Taylor and Chase Infinity representations of Assata Shakur. If you let Paul Thomas Anderson tell you, he would say, yes, indeed. Let's see if this is true in this week's live stream of the movie Insurrectionist. Welcome to the movie Insurrectionist. I am your host, Rashad, and welcome to our channel. Before we get started, please subscribe to our channel, like the video, share it, and comment within the live stream. Now, let's begin. Which is the true face of Black revolution? Let's get right down to it. I was looking forward to discussing this movie today. If you don't know, acclaimed filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson just released his newest movie, One Battle After Another. It has grossed nearly $50 million. And let me go ahead and show that to you guys. It has grossed nearly $50 million worldwide. It's projected to be his biggest movie of all time in his career, surpassing his last biggest film, which was There Will Be Blood, starring Daniel Day-Lewis. But this film is projected to be even larger, and it's probably made more than $48.5 million by this time. This was at the beginning of today. So this film actually is taking off, and it'll probably do better by word of mouth. Now, this is an epic story about an interracial couple of revolutionaries who are targeted by the government. However, the Black woman in the relationship, played by Teyana Taylor, sells out her friends and runs to Mexico after providing information to the government and having an affair with the lead officer of the campaign, played by Sean Penn. I don't want to give away too much of this movie. I discuss more of it in my review, which premieres later this week. And as expected, this movie is very well crafted in terms of story, cinematography, and acting. Particularly the performance of Chase Infinity, I thought was actually pretty good. I think she's going to be a big-time movie star after this film. It does deliver the goods. However, that's not the topic of this discussion tonight. And I want to discuss what were hardcore Black female revolutionaries like during the 60s and 70s, and do they match up with the characters that you see in this movie? As a case study, I'm going to use the godmother of Tupac himself, Assata Shakur, who recently transitioned into the realm of the ancestors on the day that I saw this film as an example to plead my case. So was Teyana Taylor's character, Perfidia, and her on-screen daughter, Willa, anything like Assata Shakur? Well, let's find out. There's a trailer that I actually want to go ahead and play for you guys. Of course, can't play the entire movie, fair use. This is a trailer for One Battle After Another. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and check it out.
Rise and shine.
Bat an eyelash.
Good morning.
There are no hands on the clock.
Why?
Because they're not needed.
It's kind of the gag they had in the film. Actually, it was pretty funny. Couldn't remember his passcode for the network of the revolution he was a part of, but let's go ahead.
What time is it?
You know, I don't remember that part. All right, let's just not nitpick over the passwords. This is Bob Ferguson. I was a part of the French 75.
this is one of the parts that kind of disturbed me. So you have here black female, pregnant belly out with a machine gun, shooting out in the middle of nowhere. And I have to ask the question, was this the representation of black female revolutionaries back in the 60s and 70s? Did they do this? Had their pregnant bellies exposed while they're out there shooting a machine gun in the middle of nowhere? Did this really happen?
Bitch, I felt like
Of course, that belly looks fake as hell, but anyway.
Tony Montana.
Whoa. And then she compares herself, let me run that back a little bit.
Felt like Tony Montana.
She compared herself to Tony Montana from Scarface. The last time I checked, Tony Montana was not a revolutionary. He was an anti-revolutionary. He fled from Cuba because of Fidel Castro's revolution. So this is what revolution in the 21st century looks like. This is what black revolutionaries were like back in the 60s and 70s. We liken ourselves to uber capitalists like Tony Montana. Last time I checked, Assata Shakur fled to Cuba, not stay here in the United States. But let's go on.
Steve Lockjaw just attacked my home, and I cannot
That's Sean Penn right there.
attack.
His character actually is important in this film. Not to give too much away, but he does have a sexual relationship with Teyana Taylor, and that comes into play a little bit later on. And his character, as you can see, by the way he's dressed, it kind of looks like Norman Schwarzkopf, but shorter and in better shape. He's a hardcore right-wing conservative, racist, white supremacist, and we'll get into a little bit of that later on.
My home, and I cannot remember for the life of my only child.
And there goes Chase Infinity. She plays Teyana Taylor's biracial daughter.
Child, the answer to your question.
Maybe you should have studied the rebellion text a little harder.
I need to find my daughter.
Well, then call us back when you have the time.
You just.
You know, you are so unsuitable for my daughter. My child comes from a whole line of revolutionaries.
She comes from a whole line of revolutionaries, huh? A whole line of revolutionaries. So where did she learn all of this pro-black divestment? Where did she learn all that? So she learned that from the whole line of revolutionaries that she came from?
And you look so lost. What are you gonna do about this baby?
You know what freedom is?
What?
No fear. Go!
This woman right here, I wanted to highlight this in terms of her name. I heard that she's a rapper, actually. Didn't know that. But in the movie, she goes by the name of Jungle Pussy. I'm not even playing. That's her actual name in the film. It's Jungle Pussy. And there she is, wild and untamed and shooting her AR-15 all up in the air while they're driving, just a wild, untamed, wild animal of a woman. And there it is, more swirling.
It's World War III out there.
And that's a representation of black male. And that's a representation of black male revolutionaries in this universe that's called One Battle After Another. Wood Harris in this little small role. And there's There's Chase Effendi again, but surrounded by nuns. And I'll tell you guys a little bit later on how this connects to to Assata Shakur.
Not one thing, it's another. Find that to be true.
I need you, brother. Sensei, please.
Courage, Bob. Courage.
That's it. Courage. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Hey, thank you, Sensei. Thank you, Sensei. Thank you. God damn it! Viva la revolution!
All right. So that's the trailer for this movie. That's the trailer for it. I saw it on the 25th. It came out on the 26th. So now, that is a representation of female Black revolutionaries through the eyes of Paul Thomas Anderson. You saw the clip. You saw the trailer. The women in here, the Black women that they show were vile, uncouth, violent, glorifying anti-revolutionary characters like Antonio Montana, and talking Black while sleeping white like Nikki Giovanni and Angela Davis, literally and figuratively. And notice, you only see one Black revolutionary man in this picture. The image I showed you of Wood Harris, he's literally the only brother that is a revolutionary in this movie. And he's not in charge of anything involving the revolution, even though we're the main targets of marginalization in this country. And to be a Black female, you must be a divester, a swirler, and a bedwench for the conservative white supremacist establishment. That is Teyana Taylor's character. Is this what Assata Shakur was all about? Well, we in the B1 Spaces have been honoring her, but is this what Black female revolutionary energy is supposed to be about? I want to show you guys something else. There was a clip that I saw early on today from Teray, and it raised my antennas. We have Teray, a writer that has been propped up like Mark Lamont Hill by the white liberal establishment, and he spoke about this film. And something which is something I had no issue with, but there was something that he did in this video that was problematic to me. And I'm like, brother, come on, man. But let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. Fair use.
It's complicated. There's a lot of amazing Black women in this picture. Teyana Taylor is on fire. There's this smoldering energy that comes from her whenever she's on screen. Chase Infinity is also awesome as young Willa. And my girl Regina Hall is the shit too. In a lot of ways, this is a meditation on the nature of fathers. And
on the nature of fathers. Okay. All right. Okay, the story is about that. But we'll get into what Assata Shakur's husband and father of her children actually look like. But let's keep going.
And the way that biological fathers can sometimes be your worst enemy, while your chosen father, or the father who chose to be your father, can be your greatest savior.
Whoa. So I had to stop that for a second. I know this is not a show about dating. It's not a show about relationships, but did he just say that your chosen father or your biological father could be your worst enemy? Your biological father sometimes is your worst enemy? Your worst enemy. Huh. Very interesting. What about these, like in this movie, a woman who has an insatiable appetite for men and she decides to have sex with 2 or sometimes 3 different men at the same time, and she's not sure who the father actually is? Is that a case of bad parenting, or is this a case of bad choices? But I don't want to go down to that rabbit hole. But anyway, I found it interesting what he said. It sounds like sip talk to me.
It's also about the lifespan of a revolutionary and how their lives can sometimes devolve into years of running away from the government.
Whoa. Whoa. Now, this was the part that really raised my antennas and made my blood boil a little bit. You show a picture of Assata Shakur next to Teyana Taylor, this pro-black divester, this woman who sleeps with hardcore white racists in this film, that's what Sean Penn is, has a baby by them, and you want to compare them to Assata Shakur? Really, my dude? You couldn't talk about anybody else. You're supposed to be a writer, my dude. I mean, have you actually researched this woman? Have you actually taken it upon yourself to find out what she was actually all about? But I guess some writers don't read, but this one does. But anyway.
Sean Penn gives us one of the great movie.
And that was just about it. That was all I wanted to talk about. That part was the part that really got under my skin. Him illustrating and trying to shoehorn Assata Shakur into his video and try to compare her to Teyana Taylor's character, her leaving. Ladies and gentlemen around the world, those of you watching here, us at the movie Insurrectionist, I want to present to you the real Assata Shakur. I want to present to you guys what a real hardcore black female revolutionary looked like, what she stood for. And I'm going to move on to this article so you can actually see it for yourselves. This is what a real hardcore black female revolutionary looked like. Now, she wasn't the only one. There were others. Kathleen Cleaver, Afena Shakur, Tupac's mother. If you had a chance to read some more stuff about her, she actually put in a lot of work as well. But definitely the most prolific of women of this breed that they tried to present in this film is Assata Shakur. And in this article written by the Liberation, this article is entitled Assata Shakur, The Making of a Revolutionary Woman. Now, I'm not going to read the whole entire article. It'll take too long, but there's certain parts of it I actually am going to read. So you guys can get an understanding of exactly what kind of individual and woman that she was. So right here, when we think of political prisoners and when we think of those who have restlessly committed themselves to black liberation, I always think of Assata Shakur. From Assata's story, we are able to learn what it means to be motivated by deep love and for the people and the struggle for freedom and what it means to embody and determine an unbreakable spirit in the face of crackdowns and government repression designed to stifle and destroy the movement. Account after account from Assata's comrades and fellow revolutionaries describes Assata as a light, a positive spirit, remained disciplined and committed to the struggle despite incredible hardships. That don't sound like anything that the Teyana Taylor character in this movie was all about. She wasn't an action junkie. She wasn't out there seeking attention with her pregnant belly out trying to shoot a gun. She didn't abandon her family to pursue the quote unquote revolution. And she didn't tell on her comrades. That was not Afena Shakur. That was the imagination of Paul Thomas Anderson. But let's go ahead and move on. In this part, she talks about her name. I wanted a name that had something to do with struggle. Born Joanne Bryant and married as Joanne Chrismart. That was her husband, who was black, by the way. Assata Shakur changed her name in order to fully identify with the revolutionary struggles in her African heritage and honor her comrade, Zaid Malik Shakur, who was murdered by state forces in 1971. she writes in her autobiography. And I believe Zaid Mike Shakur was Tupac's uncle, I believe. And if you want to know what he looked like, here's a picture of him. He didn't look like Leonardo DiCaprio, didn't look like Sean Penn, didn't look like Paul Thomas Anderson. He looked like what he was, a foundational Black American. And Assata Shakur took his name. She honored and respected Black men, or this Black man particularly, because she took his name. A lot different than what you saw in that movie. Whole lot different from what you saw in this movie. Well, a Black female revolutionary got her name from a Black man. And like I said, a Black woman honoring a Black woman, I thought that was a foreign concept. But let's go ahead and get back to this article. So furthermore, it goes on and talks about her background and where she was from. Okay, of course, she came from New York. She was raised by her, I'm not going to read all this, just go through and paraphrase it. She was raised by her mother, who was a school teacher, grandparents, and her aunt, who was a civil rights worker, who practically raised her, exposed her to a whole new life. She got her GED and went ahead and after she did that, emerged and enrolled into the City College of New York, where she began her involvement in political activism. And it was after she graduated that she went ahead and went to Oakland, where she learned from Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale and the Black Panther parties themselves, and opened up her own chapter in Harlem, where she coordinated programs like the famous Free Breakfast and Children's Program. So once again, who was this person that she actually started this that she learned under? Was it Leonardo DiCaprio? Was it Sean Penn? Was it Paul Thomas Anderson? Was it the Zaddies? No. This is what they look like. FBA Black men. Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, the founders of the Black Panther Party. Those were her teachers. That's who she learned from. That's exactly who she learned from. So according to this article, those are two FBA Black men that she learned the game from. But the FBI was mainly interested in multiracial revolutionary groups, right? Maybe that's why this movie showed all the swirling and pro-Black divesting, because the focal point was interracial sexual access among the Black Panthers and some of these other Black liberation groups, right? Well, let's see if this theory is actually true. So down here, this part of the article talks about Assata Shakur, guilty of fighting for freedom, and it explains about COINTELPRO. I read just the first, I'll read this part here, very important. So COINTELPRO, the government counterintelligence program of the 60s and beyond, was created with the intention to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, and otherwise neutralize Black nationalists and Black liberation movements and their leaders. It is now absolutely clear from FBI documents that since at least 1971, the FBI, in cooperation with the state and local law enforcement, conducted a campaign to specifically criminalize, defame, harass, and intimidate Assata Shakur, and of course others, Fred Hampton, as well as Geronimo Pratt in Los Angeles, and other Black Panthers across the United States. The U.S. government saw Assata's dedication to her cause and leadership within the Black sovereignty movement as a threat to the internal security of the United States. Whoa. But I thought in the movie that we are talking about right here, this flick, that this movie was all about multiculturalism. That these were radicals that were out here fighting and campaigning to stop discrimination against LGBT and illegal immigrants and abortion rights and things like that. But according to what we just read right here, the US government targeted them not because they were interested in trying to free illegal immigrants, but they were interested in stopping them because they wanted to prevent Black sovereignty and also Black liberation within the United States. That's what Assata Shakur was fighting for. According to this, Paul Thomas Anderson must not have read about this, evidently. Maybe he didn't. He must have stayed home that day from school. Anyway, so the article goes on and talks about in 1971, Assata and of course, two comrades, which were Sandiata Akoli and Zaid Shakur, were pulled over by the state troopers for a faulty taillight. And that, of course, is when the incident happened when Zaid Shakur and one of the state troopers were killed, and Assata was also shot, but forensic evidence backed up that Assata couldn't fire the gun, and she was sentenced to life plus 33 years in prison, and convicted through a government conspiracy to destroy Black freedom fighters like yourselves who wanted to liberate Black folks from this capitalistic system. And then, of course, Sandiata Akoli, he was sentenced to many, many years in jail. And actually, it says here that he wouldn't make parole until he's 94, but he was actually released a couple of years ago. Show you a picture of him. There he is. He was released in May 26, 2022. Here's the other individual that was involved in that incident on the New Jersey Turnpike when the cop was shot. And this is the incident that put Assata Shakur into prison, and ultimately what led to her going on to exile in Cuba. So, interesting article. You want to go ahead and read about it. Interesting thing to look at. So, we already know that according to this movie, when they say that when they point out that these government agencies were after these liberation groups because they were trying to free all these illegal immigrants from cages, they were trying to protect LGBT rights and abortion rights. That doesn't live up to the actual reality of how the government was treating liberation militant groups. They were going after those that wanted to liberate Black folks and those that were trying to create an autonomous Black state for ourselves. But what about our family? I know those of you guys probably asked, well, maybe Paul Thomas Anderson got that part wrong. But he couldn't have got that part right. But what about her family? She had a biracial kid. Why would he make that up? Why would he put that in the movie? It wasn't true. Well, let's go ahead and see. So, whoa. This is an article that I saw from House and Whips called Assata Shakur's Family, all about her husband, parent, and children. It's about her family. And as you can see, this here is her beautiful daughter, Assata. She's around the same age that Tupac would be if he were still alive. And from as far as I can tell, she is not biracial. But then again, you do have some biracial Black people like Holly Berry, who is technically biracial, but you wouldn't know it. So maybe she is biracial. Maybe she had a father that was Black adjacent, right? Possibly so. But then again, let's go ahead and look at what her father actually looked like. There's her father right there. There's her father right there. This is Kakuya Shakur. the daughter of Assata Shakur, and this is her father right here. He's a black man. Last I checked, he don't look like Leonardo DiCaprio. He don't look like Sean Penn. He don't look like Paul Thomas Anderson. He's of the Africanoid persuasion, if you want to use that anthropological term. That is what he looks like. So contrary to this movie that we just saw, real black female freedom fighters, the ones that this movie so desperately tried to emulate, they were not pro-black divestors. They believed in what they said. And on top of that, they were not bed wenches. These were black women that actually respected black people. They respected black men. They respected the black family. And they found it important to have that tie with their children and also the men that created the children with them. I know that both of them at one point were not raising their daughter because he served a lot of time in jail. And of course, Assata, we know her situation, but eventually Assata was raising her daughter, and her daughter eventually came to Cuba, and she raised her daughter in a large portion of her life. So there's one last thing I wanted to show you, just so you guys can see what the organization she came from, the Black Liberation Army, the BLA. This is a very good video that I found on Reddit, and it's 50 minutes long. I can't play the entire thing, of course, too much time, but I want to show you one part so you can actually see further evidence of what her organization looked like, and then compare this and juxtapose this to what Paul Thomas Anderson shows us in this movie, one battle after the other, in terms of the revolutionary group.
The fight is against all aspects of this government's its laws and how oppressive they are and how unfair they are. So when we go off in the courtroom and don't allow the trial to proceed, and we disrupt the trial, and we're not having it, or we're not coming out and whatnot, the mass will see that. And the first the mass may say, there's some crazy motherfuckers there. But then on the other hand, they could see the contradictions. That's what we're talking about and whatnot. The same thing with Sunday Arcola's trial, the 21 and whatnot. In 21, you had individuals in the 21 trial who defended themselves. Assata Shakur, she was one of her.
There's Tupac's mom, Assata Shakur. She's a part of the Shakur.
She defended herself, and she did it eloquently. And she pointed out all the contradictions in that 157 count indictments they brought against them. You understand? And a 2-year trial, the most costly trial in New York State's history up until that time. And after 2 years of being incarcerated, most of them in Sunday Ellis, they locked up the whole time.
This right here is what I was looking for right here. So you got a good look at this. You see this, all black people. This is what the Black Liberation Army looked like. This is the organization that Assata Shakur, you see a picture of her down here. That's Tupac's mom. You have Lamiba Shakur. I believe that's his stepfather, or his uncle. And all the people you see here, all of them, these are all black folks. All black folks. Quite different from what you see in this movie, one battle after the other. Quite different. Quite different. Because in this movie, you only had one black man, and he was in it. He was actually there just for a couple of films, a couple of minutes in the movie. That was a representation of revolutionaries that were down for the cause, and this was supposed to be a representation of what black revolutionaries look like coming out the 60s and 70s. But this is the kind of environment that Assata Shakur actually came from. A black environment, a pro-black environment. Hence the title, the Black Liberation Army. And this is the environment that Tupac came from. And his mother, Assata Shakur. So I think I pled my case that Assata Shakur, who was the godmother and step aunt of Tupac, she came from a long line of revolutionaries that fought against white supremacy on all levels. And as you can see, her husband was black, her daughter's father was black, her child was black. The organization that she was a part of was entirely black. And they were targeted for trying to liberate black people. Their primary concern was the issues of black American society, not LGBTQ society, not white feminist society, or immigrant society. The FBI targeted them because they were trying to liberate black people. When Paul Thomas Anderson created a modern day Roger Corman style exploitation movie like The Big Birdcage, it minimizes who the real revolutionaries were, what they stood for, and how they conducted themselves. Assata Shakur was not a pro-black divester with a biracial child and a fetish for hardcore white supremacist males. Revolutionary movements in American society largely was founded and led by black men, although they were a considerate amount of black women that were a part of these organizations. By the way, Huey P. Newton actually verified that at one point, the Black Panther Party, I think, was about 60% women. So I'm not undermining or minimizing the role that black women played in this struggle, even as I make these statements. But their main concern was the survival of black people, not the issues that were adjacent to black society. And I have to say this, although I'm a fan of some of Paul Thomas Anderson's work, because I'm a filmmaker myself, and he's made some movies that made me want to get involved into films. But my commitment to my people, and also my commitment to the revolutionaries like Assata Shakur that got us to the point that we are today, comes first. And I have to make sure that they're being represented correctly, which is what he did not do in this film. They were not Jezebels, bedwenches, or traitors as they were depicted in this film. They're women of class, intelligence, and decorum, and I will not allow questionable views of black people, and particularly of one of our now recent ancestors, Assata Shakur, to go unchallenged. Now I'll open up the Zoom line. If anyone wants to join in, I will accept your call. The link is in the description box, and I will tell you, and you can tell me your thoughts. Does this film, one fight after another, represent black female revolutionaries accurately? Or is it just propaganda? Let us all know this is the movie Insurrectionist. Waiting for someone to call in. If I don't have any callers, I'm going to just wrap this up. Like to have some people call in. The description or the link is actually in the description on the page. Take it. Nobody's calling in, huh? If no one calls in, I guess we're going to go ahead and wrap this up for the evening. I guess we'll wrap this up for the evening then. So nobody's calling. End the broadcast. Well, I guess since no one's calling in, I guess we'll go ahead and end this broadcast. Thank you for tuning in. This is Rashad from the movie Insurrectionist. Please make sure that you subscribe, like the channel, share the page, and follow us on X. And remember, the theatrical release will never be televised. Take care.